So let's get into that. Because it's time for headphone highlights. We are not going to be talking about IEMs today. I know, it's hard to believe, but it's true. We have gone through all my entire IEM collection, at least for now, and we're going to be moving back over into a category. We're starting a new category. This is a new category. This is wait a minute, do I not have my headphone highlight music on? It better be on. It is on. Okay, great. Super. This is a new category that I'm kind of just calling the wild card category. Because none of these headphones necessarily have anything to do with each other. None of them necessarily have any connection to each other or any connection to any other style of headphone. We've kind of entered a point in these headphone highlights now where I'm going to continue to highlight headphones that I just own, but I don't necessarily consider to be part of, you know, my dynamic driver category or my planar magnetic category or my IEM category. They're more just headphones I've set aside because I think they're unique, or just a bit of a standalone kind of product. This is kind of the category where we might talk about stuff like gaming headsets, for example. So that kind of gives you an idea. And what we're starting out with today is something that's a fairly recent purchase for me, but nonetheless very, very interesting. These are the blue microphone Elias. Is that right? The Elias? I don't think that's right. Hold on a minute. I thought they were the Lolas. Yeah, these are the Lolas. These are the blue microphone Lolas. Blue microphone. Yes, it is the same blue that makes blue microphones, like your Blue Yeti, your Blue Snowball. That's what we have here. These are their attempt at a headphone. They have a couple variants of this headphone design. Holy cow, finally, real headphones. I know. We're finally talking about over-ear headphones again. It's exactly what these are. These are an over-ear dynamic headphone. By Blue, who are known for their microphones. Not probably something you would expect a microphone manufacturer to build, but nevertheless, here we go. They make a headphone, and it's a very strange headphone. This is a pretty darn unique design. I will say that this is probably to date the most overly engineered headphone I've ever seen in terms of the way it's built. The build of this headphone is bizarre. It is super complicated and ornate and complex, and I don't know why they decided it needed to have all of this crazy engineering, but it's cool. So let's take a little bit of a look here. Right off the bat, the cable it comes with, I believe it comes with two different cables. One's longer than the other. I believe I am using the shorter cable, and it does have a built-in microphone on the cable if you care about that kind of thing. I do not, so I don't worry about it. And it does, the connector entry is a 3.5 millimeter. Come on, get in there. Yeah, simple 3.5 millimeter. Not a big deal. It is a 4-pull because of the microphone. The cable itself is flat. Look at that. It's a flat cable. Wide this way, flat this way. It's fine. It's a serviceable cable. I have no problems with it. It's got a nice kind of drape to it. It's not all janky and tangly. And the termination on both ends is the same, 3.5 millimeter. And it's fine. It's a decent length. I don't have any problems with it. It is, because it is flat and this design of cable, it does have a tendency to disagree with you if you try to like rotate it at certain angles, and that could be a little bit obnoxious, but it's nowhere near a big enough deal to really dock the headphone at all. But anyway, a fairly unique cable. We don't usually see many flat cables with headphones. All right, so the build on this thing. It's a mixture of pretty good quality plastic and some metal components. And one of the most unique hinging mechanisms I've ever seen on a headphone. This thing moves in very weird, almost organic-like way. So check this out. This is kind of its condensed position. When we want to wear this thing, we have to pull it down and then out. And if you watch the headband up here, these bands right here will actually condense into the headband. Like so, to fit over your head. So you have this arm here that swivels on both sides independently, and the headband also extends to match the form of the width of your head. It's a lot. That's a lot of machining and a lot of engineering to figure this out. I don't know why they decided to do that. It just seems like so much work, but there it is. It's cool. I think it's really futuristic and neat, but it's just wild. It's wild and honestly very over-engineered. But so your arms here, all the way leading up into the headband, are metal. They're nice. The headband itself on the top, metal, and it has the nice blue logo printed up there on top. The top of the headband is this pretty soft protein leather with maybe a little tiny bit of foam up there. It does kind of do this weird splitting right on the edges here. You can see kind of has these little ear wedges on the other side here. So as it collapses, that's the purpose of that, is so it doesn't like wrinkle the leather. Okay, cool. Thanks for figuring that out. But again, just kind of weird that they even bothered to engineer it that way. So cool. These are closed back, 100%. So no sound is leaking out of these. The pads are pretty large. They're a bit of an ear shape, but the actual opening here is a little, the narrowness here between the front and the back of the pad is pretty small. It's not even a full two knuckle space for me here. So if you have very large ears, that might be a problem. For me, to get that to fit, my ear kind of tucks into it, and the back of my ear kind of folds backwards and is resting on the back of the pad here. It's not uncomfortable. It's totally fine. I don't mind it. But if you are the kind of person that hates to have your ear touching the pad of your headphone, these might be a little bit too narrow for you. Or if you have very large pads, they might be a little too small of an opening for you. The pads are technically removable. However, they use a proprietary clipping system to clip into the actual chassis of the drivers. And what that means, unfortunately, is if you want to switch out these pads, you either have to have the same, blue manufactured protein leather pads, or if you want to go with a third-party pad modifier and get maybe a suede leather pad like I actually looked into doing. The unfortunate thing is, in order to do that, you might be required to remove the proprietary clip that's in these pads to wrap those around the new pads. And to do that, you would have to destroy these pads. So if you want to do a pad swap, you really want to make sure that those pads come with a clip to clip in here. Otherwise, you're going to have to destroy the pads that these come with. And on that note, my pads are doing fine so far, but this is still a fairly new set of headphones that I haven't worn a ton. But notoriously, these pads are known for disintegrating and kind of turning into that terrible kind of powdery, black powdery nastiness that really cheap protein leather turns into. So they're known for that. That's not ideal. That's annoying. Yes, it is. They look nice and secure. They are very secure. Yes. Oh, thank you, Ginger. You had a blue mic that I had a lot of issues with, and I'm very wary of blue now. So, I mean, yeah. Blue microphones are great entry microphones. If you want to get a bit more serious about audio, I would look a little further than blue mics. I haven't tried like their super high-end stuff, so maybe that's pretty good. I don't know. But, you know, I've had the blue Snowball, I've had the blue Yeti, and they served me fine. But, you know, you can easily upgrade to an Audio Technica like this, and it'll, in my opinion, offer you a bit more performance. But in terms of the headphone, you know, it's interesting. I will mention also, in regards to removing the pads, this is important. I didn't know this when I tried it. When I tried taking the pads off to see if I could, how they're attached. I watched a video on how to remove them. In order to remove these pads, you do have to have maybe like a guitar pick or something like that to kind of wedge in here and one by one pop the clips off of the chassis. That's not unusual, but what does suck is this chrome around the edge here is extremely easy to damage. And if I show you this, it might be a little difficult to see on the camera, but you might notice there's some blemishes on my chrome from areas where I tried to, like right there, my thumb, where my fingernail is. It's very hard to see. It's very maybe small, maybe not that big of a deal to some people, but it did dent it. It did, you know, scratch it up, dent it, made it a little gnarly. In comparison, here's how it should look. Nice, even, smooth, straight seam. And we go back over here, you'll see like there at the bottom, there's some dents and some wonkiness from me trying to undo the clip. So that's something to be aware of. If you're going to try and remove these pads, you probably want to be a bit more careful about it than I was, because I didn't expect that this chrome section to bend and to deform the way that it did. So be aware of that. Also, interestingly, this section right here is rubber. This is a rubberized section, and the point of that, again, because they have to over-engineer this thing, is it can swivel just enough, just a tiny, tiny bit of swiveling, and you could see that the rubber kind of molds with it. So rather than having the actual entire driver chassis be able to kind of swivel and pivot, they have this rubberized kind of dome here to more or less simulate that and help kind of form fit the headphone to your ear. Yeah, I just need some chrome polish. We could, we'll get that straightened right out of you, no problem. Well, that'd be nice. Okay, so yeah, there's your build. Interesting headphone. Very interesting build. Way over-engineered, in my opinion. But cool. I think it's cool. I will also mention really quick, these are the Lolas, the blue Lolas. There's another version of this that is a little bit better known. I believe they're called the blue Mix-Phis. They had a different name, but I believe now they're called the blue Mix-Phis. And the only difference between the Mix-Phis and the Lolas, from my understanding, is that the Mix-Phis have a built-in amplifier in the headphone so that you are able to power the headphone properly in lower impedance power sources like your phone or maybe your computer directly. These do not have, the Lolas do not have the built-in amplifier, so they are more difficult to drive. They do require an actual power source. So I'm using my own dedicated headphone amplifier to power these. If they had the built-in amplifier, I wouldn't need the dedicated headphone amplifier. But I have one, I'm going to use it, so it makes no difference to me, and it makes them a little bit cheaper. So that's why we went that way. Comfort. These pads are pretty good. They might not have the best longevity from what I hear, but from right out of the box, the way they are, they're pretty thick, as you can see. They're pretty cushy. It's not memory foam, but it's just a nice, not super dense foam. And the protein leather is fine, is what you would expect. While the inside of the pad is a little narrow, like I said, it does still manage to fit over and around my ears like so. There is quite a bit of clamp force with these. And I don't know if there's really a way around that. And it's a little unfortunate. It has not been enough clamp force with enough problems that I've ever found them to be necessarily uncomfortable. However, I will mention right now, having just put them on my head, there are some pressure points. So I'm getting some pressure right here on my lower jaw, right at the very kind of tip end of where the headphone teardrop shape ends. So right here, I'm getting a little bit of extra pressure. And then I'm also getting just a tiny bit extra pressure right above my ear, almost right on my temple. So you might want to be wary of that. A little bit of pressure here and some pressure down here. After a really prolonged listening session or gaming session or whatever, it might be a problem. It might start to be painful. But for me, I've been wearing them for a week now, solid. And I've been able to wear them for hours without really much fatiguing. Probably the most unfortunate aspect of the fit and feel for comfort is the headband. As over-engineered as it is, wearing the hat, it's not so bad. But without the hat, there is definitely a pressure point right dead center on the headband. That can be a real kind of deal breaker for a lot of people. If you're very sensitive to having the top of your head have some pressure on it. Because this definitely does put a quite hefty bit of pressure right smack dab in the middle of that headband. Once again, it hasn't been enough for me to get so fatigued that I have to take them off and not wear them anymore. But it's not the most comfortable thing. It can be irritating. It is noticeable. And if you're very sensitive to that, it's good to know that now. So in terms of our cloud comfort scale, oh my god, I feel like we haven't talked about cloud comfort for freaking ages. But cloud comfort scale, for those of you tuning in who don't know, the cloud comfort scale is our system of determining how comfortable a headphone is. The more clouds, the more comfortable it is. They're, in terms of clamp force, fairly similar to something like the Sennheiser HD6XXs, but because they have a bit more significant pressure points, we're gonna have to dock it down a little bit from that. So I'm gonna say these are maybe a 6. That might, I'm gonna stick with it. They're gonna be a 6 clouds of comfort, but that is being a little generous, I will admit. If I was being a bit more realistic, I might dock it down even a little bit further, but 6 clouds of comfort I'm fairly confident with. So they can be comfortable, they have a good solid fit, but you just gotta be aware of some of the pressure points you're gonna be potentially dealing with. Maybe if you have a smaller head, it won't be so bad because the clamp force won't be so harsh. But if you have a bigger head than me, you're probably gonna suffer even more than I am. So be aware of that. All right, the sound. I will say right off the bat, these are, like I said, a closed-back set of headphones. They're pretty well isolated. Wearing these on my head right now, I can barely hear my fan behind me. My voice is very muffled, so they have really pretty decent passive sound isolation. Which is, very nice if you don't want to have to hear your environment around you, and probably particularly nice if you're trying to mod or something. Though I don't know if I could say these are monitoring headphones. They're quite detailed. They have a good amount of detail. But the low end, you could barely hear the thunder outside. Like my outside? I can't hear it at all. If you can hear it, but I can't hear it, that should give you a good indication of how the sound isolation is on these. These actually sound pretty darn good. A lot better than I thought that they would. I was not expecting much from a blue microphone headphone. It's weird to say. But they actually do have a very pleasant, very warm and inviting sound. I do not think that they are mixing monitoring headphones. I don't think they have the performance for that, and I definitely don't think they have the neutrality for that. They do offer some pretty good detail in the high mids to your treble range. So your high end is pretty well detailed without being super sibilant. It can get a little bit bright sometimes, but not enough to be sibilant, not enough to be painful. The mid-range is a little bit recessed, so we are looking at a little bit of a V shape with these. It's not significant, it's not a very deep V. It's getting pretty close to maybe a U shape on the frequency, so you're getting a little bit of extra treble, and then a pretty gradual dip to your mid-range, and then you are getting a pretty significant boost in the bass range. The bass on these is actually quite nice. It's very... Hey boys, we have a dog invasion. Okay. They don't want to be on camera. What am I supposed to do? So the bass range is very nice. It's very impactful. It's very punchy. And it's fairly clean. It's not super muddy. It's not so far reaching into the mid-range and blooming so much that it's getting rid of your mid-range and your detail. But it's very nice. It's actually a very large sounding bass range. These are a closed back headphone. They're fairly intimate, but that bass range has some spaciousness to it. You can kind of feel it in your chest when it hits, and it kind of gives you this slight sense of size and space, even though these are fairly intimate sounding headphones. You don't get much in terms of soundstage. I won't say that it's beaming it directly into your ears, but your soundstage is limited to about where those cups are, with the exception of the bass range. Vocals are very, very nice. They're very natural sounding. They're very clean. They might be a little bit on the dull end. They're not particularly emphasized or colorized to make the vocals sound extra rich. They just kind of sound normal, natural, and pretty even. So I'd say maybe a little bit honesty in the vocals, which might be a good thing for you. What else could I say about them? They have pretty decent imaging. I was watching a stream of a friend playing Tarkov, and I was able to have a pretty easy time identifying where combat was happening around me, around him while he was playing, and the image separation was also very good. He was reloading his gun, and I could hear the echoing of that reload bounce off the walls in the room he was in and where it was bouncing from. So pretty darn good imaging and image separation on these, which makes them kind of good for gaming, which is a little strange because that's, I don't think, what they're being branded as. But yeah, they're really good for that. It was working for me really well. You know, it's a very pleasant sound. Like I said, much better than I thought it was going to be. I almost want to say it's... I know I don't appear to be very excited about the sound. I understand that. And it's not that it doesn't sound exciting. It absolutely can sound exciting. It just kind of sounds like a lot of other things that we've talked about before. With maybe, you know, a little bit more emphasis in the low end. These are fairly similar sounding to maybe some Audio Technicas we've talked about, maybe even some Hi-Fimans, even though those are planars. But it's not a sound that I find particularly unique for me because of my overall collection, but if you just want a nice, generally enjoyable and generally fairly high detail for some extra kind of sense of fidelity in your headphone and you don't have other headphones, this might be okay for you. I highly recommend you get them when they're on sale. I do not think they're worth their MSRP, which is, I believe, let's see here. Yeah, they're like about $300 MSRP. I'm not comfortable recommending these for $300. If you can get them for $150, that's a killer bargain. If you can get them for $200, okay. I think that's okay. But $300 is a little too much of a sell for me. But otherwise, they're really nice. They're way better than I thought they were going to be. And they're wholly unique in terms of design. I haven't seen any other headphone look like this and move like this. It's just weird and alien and cool. So if that's something that tickles your fancy, go for it, man. I like them. I think they're pretty darn cool. And I'm interested in trying to do a bit of modding with them. I've been looking into that a little bit. I'm not going to mention anything because I don't want to recommend a mod that is going to end up being a bad choice. But I'm going to try some stuff. See if we can make these a bit more comfortable and maybe make them a bit better in performance. But they're cool. The blue Lolas. Look at that. Wow. Neat little headphones. Well, they're not very little, but you get it. Oh, also, despite all the metal construction, they're not super heavy. They're not bad. Pretty okay. So, yeah. There you go. Blue Lolas. Good stuff. And we'll end that there.